Hi, my name is Frankie James, and I'm going to be talking today about voice agents for in-vehicle interaction. Modern vehicle infotainment is dominated today by touchscreens, which have been put into vehicles to reduce the number of buttons and knobs and other things in the system to provide a cleaner look in the cabin, and also to allow the OEMs to have the ability to add functionality over the course of the ownership of the vehicle. I've got four pictures on the screen that show both luxury vehicles and mainstream vehicles with the large touchscreens. There's an Audi Q8 with two different screens, a Dodge Ram with a very large kind of a portrait screen, the Chevrolet Equinox in the lower left, and also a Mercedes S-Class with another large iPad-looking type screen. The question is, how usable are these kinds of interfaces when you're trying to drive a vehicle? What I want to do now is walk through a few different scenarios of things you might want to do with your infotainment system while you're driving and talk about how you currently can do them with a vehicle touchscreen. The first one I'm going to start with is how to find a Monday night football game on Sirius XM, which is something that you might want to do on a Monday night. This takes a lot of steps. We start off, I'm going to use examples from a Chevrolet. We start off on the home screen and we've got 8 different options. We're going to select audio in the upper left, which brings us to a screen that's got the main audio page. It's got what's playing now. It has presets. It has the options to select different sources. And it's also got the ability to browse and things like that. The first thing that we need to do here is to select Sirius XM because we know that Monday Night Football is going to be on Sirius XM. That brings us to this screen, which shows the last Sirius XM channel we were listening to. Now we have to go under Browse to try to find the right channel. That's on the upper right. Under Browse, we have a screen that has a whole lot of categories and a few different fast selections. We're going to select Sports in the middle. And sports brings us to a page that has all of the different sports options. Because this is an NFL game, we'll select NFL play-by-play. And what we get is a screen full of all of the different teams. Now, if you don't know what team is playing for this Monday night game, you may be in trouble. How do I set my doors to automatically lock when I get out of my vehicle? This is something that you're probably going to want to do when you get a new car or a car that you're not familiar with. It's really convenient because you can keep the key fob in your pocket or in your purse, and the doors will just automatically lock and unlock. But you do have to set this functionality. So how do we do that? We're going to go through the menu structure. We start at the home screen again. We're going to select the settings button, which is on the bottom row, the second one over. Settings, we've got a lot of different categories, a lot of different choices. What we want to choose first is the vehicle settings. This is in the upper right. This brings us to a screen that's got a whole lot of different options. We're going to have to scroll down because there's too many to fit on one page. So we select the scroll button. This brings us down to this set of selections. This functionality that we want is actually under remote lock, unlock, and start. So we're going to select that. And now we've got a whole lot more options. We're again going to have to scroll down using the scroll button on the left. And then we get to the options that we want. And there's actually 2 different options that can allow us to have the doors automatically lock. It's the passive door lock. And then there's also a fun little function under that called remote left in vehicle alert. This is something that you want because it's the alert that lets you know that you're about to leave the key fob in the vehicle, and it won't let you lock the doors if you've got the key fob in there. That's really handy. But you might not have known about it. This is my last example here. So how do I enter a navigation destination while I'm driving? You don't. And that's because the vehicle OEMs have realized that this is a really dangerous thing to allow people to do, is to enter an address while you're trying to drive. And so they just don't allow it. So you don't have this as a thing that you can do. So what this tells us is that touchscreens and buttons cannot be the final word in vehicle HMI. They may look beautiful, but they cause a lot of problems. Starting at the top, the biggest problem is that the menu structures and the choices don't always map to the user's mental model. I'm very familiar with the Chevrolet screens because that's my car. And also I worked for GM for 17 years. And so I know where to find different things, but I still had to take a lot of different steps. And somebody who's less familiar is not going to know. The second problem is that selecting all of those options is a really big distraction from looking at the road. If I've got to go through 8 different steps, that's 8 different chances to not be looking when something walks out in front of my car. On the other hand, if we can use voice agents, we can give the users what they want, and they can get it just by asking the questions I started each of these examples with. So, the first one, let me hear the Monday Night Football game on Sirius XM. In this case, the user doesn't have to try to find the option in the different menu structures. They can just say that, and the voice agent will know what to do. In fact, if you've got a really voice agent that's really familiar with the setup of the vehicle, they may not even have to have been told, oh, it's on Sirius XM. You may just say, let me hear Monday Night Football. In the next example, the user can say, set my vehicle to lock the doors automatically when I leave. Again, the user doesn't have to know where in the menu structure to look. And a voice agent can also offer the additional functionality I mentioned before about not locking the key fob in the car by saying, hey, there's this sub feature that you might be interested in. Would you like me to do that for you as well? And then my last example, give me a route to the grocery store. Well, now if I'm using a voice agent, I've got the ability to maybe add this functionality back for the user. And that means that suddenly the user doesn't have to try to pull over to enter the route. It means that the voice agent can also try to clarify which grocery store do you mean and let the person continue on their journey and have more functionality. There are some open research issues to explore if we're going to be looking at voice agents in vehicles. There's 3 main categories. Number 1 is that the audio channel can be very tricky in a vehicle cabin. This is more so than if you're using audio on your computer at home because there's a lot of noise in the environment. There can be noise from people in the car, it can be kids, it can be adults. The air conditioning might be on, you might have the windows open or the convertible top down. All of these things can make it harder to send and receive speech. The other problem in the audio channel in a vehicle cabin is that microphone and speaker technology are somewhat lagging. Speakers in general are pretty good in cars because everybody likes a good sound system, but the microphones tend to be less expensive and a lower quality, which can cause a real problem for speech recognition. The next open research issue is around keeping the driver focused on the driving task. We talked about how video screens and touch screens and finding options can be a distraction. Well, it can also be a distraction to get a long, complicated instruction in audio. And that's something that the voice agents will have to account for and understand. Another thing that the voice agents will need to know how to do is how to behave like I call it behaving like a good passenger. If you have a passenger in your vehicle, they can usually keep an eye on what's happening outside. And if they see somebody stepping in front of your car, or they see some bad weather, they're probably going to keep more quiet. A voice agent, a really effective voice agent, is going to need to know how to do that as well to not start talking to you at the absolute wrong time. And then the third category of open research is around dividing attention to these secondary tasks and making that palatable for the driver. In this case, what I mean is that the voice agents need to consider how much information to give at once. If I'm asking you for something while I'm driving down a winding road, the voice agent really needs to think about, should I say the whole route for where we're going, or do they just need to know about the next turn and when is the best time to tell? And then the voice agent should also have the ability to respond to requests for clarification or for repetition. So if I'm driving down a windy road, you give me some instructions. I wasn't completely paying attention because I was trying to turn and not hit a tree. I might be able to want to say, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Or I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand what you said. Could you rephrase it? So that's something the agents will have to do. In my opinion, these latter 2 categories are the most ripe for research. There is research that has been done on distraction. A lot of it is around memorization and interruption, but some of the finer points of how to have the conversation with a voice agent are still open to be explored. Thank you.